It started with a silence that wasn't supposed to happen. The show was live. The lights were on. The audience was electric. And then, everything paused. Prince Harry sat on the couch across from the host of one of America's most watched late-night shows. He had just shared a warm laugh about parenting and peace, about life away from palaces and politics. His face glowed, but his eyes carried something deeper, something people only noticed in quiet moments. And that moment had just arrived. The host leaned forward suddenly, half grinning. "We've got someone who's been trying to reach you for a while, but this just happened minutes ago. They insisted on going live." Harry blinked. "Live?" The screen behind him flickered. A flag appeared, but it wasn't British. It was the deep red and green of Burkina Faso. Crowd murmured. Some were confused, others curious. But Harry sat upright. Instinct, almost. Royal training, maybe. Or something deeper. And then a voice came through, strong and calm. "Good evening, Prince Harry. This is Ibrahim Traoré, President of the Transition in Burkina Faso. I hope you'll forgive the directness of this moment, but this couldn't." Wait, the room froze. Harry didn't speak. He couldn't. Traoré continued. "You don't know me, but I've known you since I was 17, not through meetings or diplomacy. Through courage. Through the day you stood in front of the world and said you were walking away from a crown to protect your wife and your peace." Gasps filled the studio. The host leaned back, stunned. Tra or acute single quotes S voice didn't shake. That moment, it taught millions of us something. That sometimes the bravest act isn't fighting wars. It's refusing to fight battles that poison your soul. Harry's jaw clenched. He looked down. His hands trembled just slightly. "When I stood before my people, as a young officer," Traoré continued, "I wasn't thinking of power. I was thinking of dignity. And I remembered your eyes when you said, 'I had to do what any husband and father would do.' That line never left me. And today, I want to honor that." The screen went black. Silence. Prince Harry exhaled like he hadn't breathed in a minute. And then the audience erupted, not with noise, but with emotion. A soft gasp, a rising awe. Something was unfolding. The host leaned in, barely above a whisper. "Harry, are you okay?" Harry blinked twice, then said, "No, but in the best possible way." But what happened after the cameras stopped rolling would become one of the most shared, watched, and talked about stories in the world. Because that night, Prince Harry didn't go back to his hotel. He went to the airport. And in less than 12 hours, the Duke of Sussex was aboard a flight to Burkina Faso. Alone. No security detail, no press release, no statement. Just one man following something he couldn't explain, but had to answer. The plane touched down at dawn. There were no reporters, no red carpets, just soft morning light rising over the tarmac of Ouagadougou International Airport, and a single black SUV parked near the runway. Harry stepped out slowly, dressed in a plain shirt and jeans, no titles, no royal suit. Just a man carrying a backpack, still processing the weight of a call that had cracked something inside him. A figure approached the car. It was him. President Ibrahim Traoré. No military coat, no security entourage. Just a humble leader standing beside the door, eyes calm, shoulders squared with quiet strength. They locked eyes, and then, without words, they hugged, not like statesmen. Like brothers. Harry whispered, "I don't fully understand why I'm here." Traoré nodded. "You will." The SUV moved through winding roads, past bustling morning markets and schoolchildren waving sticks in the dust, barefoot and grinning. Harry stared out the window, absorbing the color, the motion, the soul of the country. "Why now?" he finally asked. Traoré glanced at him. "Because your story, it reminded my people of something we forgot, that even those born into power can choose empathy." They stopped at a modest school just outside the capital, Children were seated on the ground in a circle. A teacher wrote on a worn chalkboard. Behind them was a mural faded, sun-washed of African leaders and global peacemakers. And there, on the far right, was Harry, a painting of him holding hands with a child and looking forward into a sunrise. Harry stared, stunned. "That was painted 2 years ago," said Traoré, "by a student who had just learned your story." "Why me?" Traoré smiled. "Because you walked away. Not many men do that when the world begs them to stay." Harry turned to him, emotion in his throat. "I didn't think anyone was really watching." Traoré replied softly, "We were." They sat beneath a baobab tree, its massive roots coiled like the veins of the earth, drinking sweet tea poured from a dented silver pot. The breeze carried the smell of dust and mangoes. Children laughed in the distance. But here, there was stillness. "Do you know what this tree means to us?" Traoré asked. Harry shook his head. "It's called the Tree of Life. It holds water during droughts, feeds us when we starve, shades us when we have nothing else. My grandmother used to say, when you lose your way, sit under the baobab. It will remind you who you are." Harry looked up into the branches. "I was once surrounded by castles, wealth, titles, but I never felt more lost." Traoré nodded, understanding. "I was raised in a one-room house. Our roof leaked. We shared one meal a day. But somehow I always knew where I was going." "And now you run a country," Harry said with a gentle smile. "And you," Traoré said, "left a kingdom to protect your heart." They sat in silence again. Then Traoré reached into a leather folder beside him. He handed Harry a stack of handwritten letters, dozens of them. "What are these?" Harry asked, flipping through. "Letters from young boys across Africa. All of them saying the same thing. If someone like him can walk away from power to be human, then maybe I can say no when the world expects me to break." Harry's hands trembled. Traoré continued. "You see, when you spoke up about mental health, about grief, about the pain behind the palace doors, you weren't just being brave. You were giving permission. Especially to boys like me who were told to be silent." Harry stood suddenly, pacing. "I don't feel like a symbol. I feel like someone who broke his family, who left people behind, who disappointed millions." Traoré stood too. "Do you know what disappointment is? It's when a man sees the truth and still does nothing." He stepped closer, voice lower. "You saw the cracks. And instead of hiding them, you bled openly so others could heal." Harry stared, eyes wet. "Why are you showing me this now?" Traoré looked toward the children in the distance. "Because tomorrow, we show them." The next morning, the village schoolyard was transformed, not by money or luxury, but by presence. Harry stood beside Ibrahim as dozens of children gathered under the sun, barefoot, smiling, holding paper flags they'd made from scraps. On a small table sat a box wrapped in fabric inside, something that would mark a new beginning. Harry looked around. "No cameras?" Traoré shook his head. "Some things are sacred." A local elder stepped forward. "We gather here not for fame, but to honor a man who chose family over fortune, healing over history, truth over title." Harry's jaw clenched. He wasn't used to this. Not praise without agenda, not attention without noise. Just raw, quiet. Reverence. A young girl stepped forward holding a wooden plaque. It read, "The House of Courage in honor of Prince Harry." Harry blinked. Traoré acute placed a hand on his shoulder. "This schoolhouse will now offer not just reading and writing, but a safe space for boys and girls to talk about grief, about dreams, about healing. No shame, no silence." Harry stepped forward. The children looked up at him, eyes wide, waiting for something. "I don't know if I deserve this," he said softly. "But I promise to carry it well." The children clapped. Not the polite kind. The real kind, joyful, bursting, unrehearsed. Later, They sat inside the building, bare walls, dusty floors, but hearts full. Harry read to them from a book he brought, a story about a prince who became brave not by winning battles, but by protecting the people he loved. A boy raised his hand. "Sir, what made you leave the palace?" Harry paused, "Because I realized a golden cage is still a cage." The boy nodded slowly. "I want to build a house, not a cage." Traoré smiled. By sunset, the sky glowed orange behind the hills. Harry and Traoré walked the dirt road alone, a quiet peace between them. "You said yesterday that you didn't know why you were here," Traoré said. Harry nodded. "Do you know now?" He exhaled. "Yes, I'm here to remember that titles mean nothing if they cost you your truth." They stopped walking. "Can I ask you something?" Harry said "Tra" or "e acute," nodded double quotes. "Do you ever regret taking on this much responsibility?" Traoré looked up at the sky. "Sometimes. But then I remember. I'm not carrying it alone." He looked at Harry. "Now neither are you." They embraced again, not as a royal and a president, but as men who chose the harder path, not to lead, but to love. That night, under a sky scattered with stars, Harry sat alone on the palace terrace. He opened his notebook and wrote 3 words. "I remember now."